Hello, my dear friends. Today we're doing /entitled people, and in today's episode we have 3 different stories. One is a sister who believes that being chauffeured around is the best idea. The second is a doctor who believes that he should be addressed by his name, and the final one would leave you shaking your head because it's about a sister-in-law who decides to steal a baby name and believes that she should be compensated for not being able to use that name in the end. Stay tuned. This story is titled, "My sister is one of the most entitled people I know." Context: I, a 27-year-old male, just got back from a week-long vacation with my family, consisting of 5 younger sisters, 1 brother-in-law, myself, and my dad. We had a great time and everyone got along, for the most part. As far back as I can remember, my dad would take our family on vacation every summer. Although many of us are adults now and have moved out, he still plans and very generously pays for us to enjoy our vacation as a family. For this vacation, we all meet up at my parents' place in Arizona, where we all grew up, and drove together to a cabin we rented in Northern California. Unfortunately, my sister, that was born right after me, we'll call her Kristen, a 25-year-old female, had a pretty bad attitude the entire week. The background and family dynamics. During this vacation, we went out to eat 3 to 4 times. Each time we made sure that everyone, especially Christine, was asked what kind of food they wanted to eat. We've had issues in the past where Christine didn't like the food we'd ordered and was upset that no one listened to her when she said she wasn't a huge fan of what we were ordering. We frequently changed our dining plans to accommodate her, even though everyone else was on board with a certain restaurant. The last night we were there, everyone really wanted to go to a specific restaurant except her. Given that we had compromised a few times before we decided that this time we would stick with our original decision, as the rest of us were really excited about going there, Christine was visibly upset. When we were walking into town, my dad talked to her and tried to tell her that we were likely to be something we could find that she'd like. It was a pretty large menu. The rest of the night, she was cold and negative towards everyone. As mentioned before, for the majority of our vacation, she had a negative attitude and was very pessimistic. My sisters and dad felt the same way. Yesterday, we all drove from the cabin back to my parents' place in Arizona. After about an hour of arriving home, everyone went to their separate ways, back to their respective homes in other states, except for me, Kristen, and my dad. My plan was to stay at my parents' place in Arizona for 2 days before driving back to my home in a different state. I will be starting an extremely demanding job in a big city away from all my friends, so I wanted to take the opportunity to see them one last time before life gets hectic. Build up. During lunch, I asked my dad about Kristen's travel plans. He tells me that she's leaving the following morning for a 5 a.m. flight. He mentioned trying to coordinate how she'd get to the airport, as he wouldn't be able to take her. He had a flight to catch for business in another state after we finished lunch. I suggested that she take an Uber, and my mom said that he mentioned that to her. She said she doesn't take Ubers. I could see that my dad was a bit concerned about figuring it out, so I told him that I would rather not have to wake up at 3 a.m. the following day to take her, given that I had plans with my friends that evening, but if it absolutely came down to it, I would. He understood and was supportive of my plans and said that he would talk to her. He mentioned that he thought her apprehension with Uber might be the financial aspect, and said that he would be more than willing to cover the cost of it for her. I go to hang out with my friend. My dad, I assume, talks to her and then catches his flight out of town. The explosion. Later that evening, I'm about to go to bed and I knock on Kristen's door to make sure she's good to go. I ask her if she's checked in for her flight, etc., etc. Kristen says, "Yes, are you still good to take me to the airport?" Her and I never talked about this, so I'm assuming she spoke with my dad, but I'm not entirely sure. OP, "I'd rather not take you at 3 a.m. Have you talked to Dad?" Kristen says, "Dad said you told him you'd take me." OP says, "I didn't say that. I said it would be an option if it came down to it. Are you able to take an Uber? It's really early." Kristen said, "An Uber is $120. OP said, "Why don't you talk to Dad? He told me earlier that he was happy to cover it for you." Kristen says, it's not just the money. I'm not comfortable taking an Uber. He says, okay, well, sometimes we have to do things in life that we aren't comfortable with. Kristen says, even if it risks my life? Opie says, if you're so uncomfortable with it, why don't you change your flight to a more reasonable time? She didn't have any reason to go back to her home state that early. Kristen said, I've picked you up from the airport many times before. In Arizona, when we came down to spend the holidays with my parents, and it was twice, mind you. Opie, at 3 a.m.? Kristen, no, but I would. Opie says, when you had plans to go out late with your friend for a month, I don't think you would. Kristen, whatever, dude. At this point, I walk away. This conversation happened through a closed door. She was in her room and I was in the hallway. Aftermath and resolution. I called my dad to see what they had talked about Aline the day before he left. Apparently, he'd asked her about the Uber and told her that he'd be willing to pay for it. She said that she didn't feel safe taking an Uber. I told him what happened and expressed my frustration. I explained to him that I really didn't feel so inclined to make sacrifices and go out of my way for her when I had just spent the last week being disrespected and watching it happen to everyone else in the family as well. Furthermore, I explained that it goes beyond this vacation, that 2 months prior, when we were on a vacation with my mom, I was snapped at numerous times by her for minor things. This has gone on for years to this point. At first, it was just towards me, but now she's starting to affect others as well. I chatted with my mom about the situation, and apparently, my other sisters had complained about Christine's negativity on the trip. My dad said that he understood my frustration and would talk to her again to try and figure something out. My dad calls me back 30 minutes later. At this point, I've cooled off a bit. I go, look, Dad, it's fine. I'll just take her. I don't want it to be a hassle for you. I was being a bit stubborn and I'm frustrated, but I'll do it. Dad says, no worries. She had flexibility and no need to be back so early. So we changed her flight for 8 a.m. It was easy. I go, okay, great. That makes things a lot more manageable. I'll make sure we leave here around 6 a.m. Dad goes, well, she didn't want you to take her. She's getting a friend to do it. My take. Looking back, I probably should have taken her from the get-go. My main frustration in all this is her sense of entitlement. I felt she had acted very entitled the entire previous week with the eating out. She didn't help with cleaning, preparing food, packing up, etc., etc. It felt like she was just expecting me to take her regardless of the time, my plans, etc. It was extremely frustrating because we have all been so accommodating and considerate of her. Yet, we get thanked with negativity. Despite our consideration for her, we get no consideration back. Beyond that, and I'm in the wrong for holding on to this as I should have just let it go, she's been snappy with me all week. So the last thing I wanted to do was to go out of my way to do this. Would love to hear your thoughts. Does she seem entitled? Am I in the wrong here? Okay, this is a lot to take in. In my opinion, Opie probably went overboard with how he reacted. I think it should have been a more upbeat or conversation than this, but I guess sometimes you just can't help it, can you? Oh well, I hope she got where she was going well. This story is titled The Time Dr. Ick Came for Dinner. I just posted this as an answer on another sub. Someone told me to post it here as well. It's a funny story that happened a long time ago when I was in college. Back then, I had a friend who I loved. She's a sweet, mild girl who used to paint watercolor flowers. We met in art school. She was kind, gentle, and very meek. Her parents set her up with a gent who was about 7 to 9 years older, friend of the family. Honestly, I could not take her boyfriend. He was rude, arrogant, and the total opposite of her. He'd picked her up from classes many times. He was the snap, I'm late for something guy. She would scramble to get her stuff ready so he wouldn't have to wait. In short, I thought he was a jerk. He was the guy who parked in the fire zone with his MD plates. So important he was cause he was a doctor. He never really talked to the classmates, just kind of made her rush out of class to go get their stuff done. Unless he was outside just honking to get her attention, too important to come in and get her. I called him Dr. Ick. My friends laughed, sweet friend didn't. A few months into school, our married grown-up friends decided to have a dinner party. We all got the invite. Of course, Dr. Boyfriend was coming. So sweet friend and Dr. Ick came late. We were all seated at the table by the time they arrived. He was introduced to the room. The doctor reprimanded the host for not calling him doctor. Insert first name here. He wanted us to call him doctor at the dinner table because he was a doctor. Did I mention he was a doctor? He was late because he had a doctor thing. Doctor. The host apologized, called him doctor, name, and then pointed him to the 2 seats at the end of the table, since we had all been seated by now. The doctor said he would prefer to sit at the head of the table. After all, he was a doctor. He might be called out for an emergency during the dinner. The room got quiet. Too quiet. The clock ticked gently in the background, and I began to laugh. Not just any laughter. Oh no. I broke into deep, hacking laughter of the condescending kind. You know, the big, ugly, snort kind you see in movies, but pray your nose will never make it in real life. Yeah. Snorts, chuckles, and wheezes laughter. Ugly, funny laughter. It was absolutely absurd. He wasn't kidding either. He wasn't with us for more than 5 minutes before he kicked the dude whose house we were in out of his chair at the head of the table because he was a what? A doctor. Well, after that, Dr. Ick turned purple from anger. What with me laughing at him at the dinner table and all, he was, wow, DEFCON level 1 angry. I can't say I didn't blame the guy. I guess I would be pissed too if someone broke out into Joker-like laughter at my own existence, which, yes, I was very, very guilty of. So there I am, laughing at the table, when he starts lecturing me on how dumb I am, how he was a doctor, how dare I laugh at him, which, you bet, made me laugh louder. I'm shocked I didn't swallow my own tongue at this point, honestly. I was in tears, gasping for air, snorting like some sort of hyena in the desert. I fell off my chair. I was asked if I smoked pot before I came. I didn't. I was just shaking my head no as I snickered, unable to make words come out of my mouth. The laughter. I had been hit with Joker juice. Oh, thank God YouTube was not a thing yet, because this was legendary meme stuff. I just thought this guy was such a jerk. This had to be some performance art thing, like some form of reverse stand-up. Who asks the host to get out of their chair, whose meal you're about to eat, after showing up late in the first place. I just found it hysterical. Well, at this point, we were all laughing. I'm not proud. Most of the folks in the room were outright laughing at me because it was just too funny not to. I mean, how can you not snicker at a grown woman dying of laughter on the floor at this joke? It was hilarious, very infectious, and you bet, all my fault. I guess me rolling on the floor begging for air was something the good doctor wasn't interested in, because he took my sweet friend and his dog Ick asses out of the house, never to return again. About 20 minutes later, I composed myself. I swear, I was wiping away tears. The chortling stopped and everyone got really quiet, like real quiet. Too quiet. Food on the table, wine glasses filled, the clock ticking in the background, and I say in a very calm voice, "That guy was a dickhead. Can you pass the mashed potatoes, please?" Which started the laughter all over again. Best dinner party ever. My sweet friend had a dark side after all. Good for her. When she saw me that following Monday, she gave it to me with both barrels and a stick. I was insensitive. I was a jerk. I was a disgrace. I was an absolute subpar human and a rotten friend. All of which I could sort of agree with, except for the subpar human bit. I mean, I might just be an extraordinary type human from not have my teeth exploding out of my head from laughing so hard. Go me! Can that be a superpower? Well, to summarize, she wanted an apology. Not just to her, but to Dr. Ick. He was coming to get her after class, and I would have to make a big production about it too. Bells, whistles, groveling. Oh, she was done with me. The good doctor parked his car in the far lane, strolled into our class, folded his arms over his chest, and waited for me to apologize. I, being the I that I am, walked right up to the prick and told him, "I'm sorry, you're an asshole." And then I walked out of that class. He was furious. I just kept walking while laughing. Well, you bet she was done with me after that. She made sure every class she took, I was not in. She eventually married that tad too. Everyone in our little art group at school, except for us folks at the dinner party, had been invited for their big old doctor wedding. I heard it was a lovely event out in the Hamptons. Good for her. Also, Dr. Ick is a podiatrist. Hey, if Mrs. Dr. Ick reads this, I hope it all worked out well for you. Best wishes for a good life. I still think about this night when it's going sideways in my life. Makes me laugh. What a wow. I can't imagine being invited to someone's dinner party and expecting that I be given the head seat just because I'm a what? You guessed it, a doctor. What kind of sense of entitlement would I need to have to be able to pull that? Dr. Ick was just it. Ick. This story is named Entitled Sister-in-Law Stole Our Baby Name. Now she regrets it. Hey y'all, long time lack and all that. This is a throwaway account. To cut to the chase, my wife and I spent 4 years trying to get pregnant before the wrong side of 35. We are currently 33 respectively now, and we are blessed with a wonderful infant son. My wife has a younger half-sister that she has been LC with for some time. The woman is entitled and toxic, and also her mother's golden child. We've refused to let her or my mother-in-law in the house since they both blatantly tried to make off with my wife's jewelry box a couple of years ago. The box contained a lot of valuable jewelry inherited from my wife's grandmother. Said jewelry is now in a safety deposit box as per my suggestion. My wife and I had nearly given up trying to conceive when it suddenly happened, and we were ecstatic. After we found out we were having a boy, we started looking into names. I ended up suggesting the name of my Scottish grandfather, and my wife loved, so that's the name we settled on. But we made the mistake of posting about it on social media. Well, no surprise to the stereotype in this mess, my sister-in-law was pregnant too, and was months further along than my wife, and also having a boy. She decided to claim my grandfather's name for her own son, and not just the first name, but the middle name too. We called her pissed over what she was doing, and she smugly told us that there's nothing we can do about it, which she was sort of right. There was nothing we could do about it legally, as it's still not a crime to steal planned baby names. We realized the drama was exactly what my sister-in-law wanted, and she thought that by taking the name for herself, we'd not be able to use it. I laughed and told her that while what she did was dirty and underhanded, we would keep our chosen name, and she could just deal with it whether she decided to go through with copying us or not. Well, my sister-in-law's baby daddy called me and said I was an unreasonable D for still wanting to use the name after sister-in-law claimed it. I said she claimed nothing, and since we couldn't own the name, then neither could they. Before he ended the call, he threatened me by saying I'd be sorry if we didn't change the name. Then he hung up before I could respond. Months later, sister-in-law has a healthy baby boy and names him my grandfather's name. We did not show up for the birth, both because of the pandemic and because we simply didn't care to be there. Sister-in-law called us wanting congratulations, but we told her we simply didn't care, and that if she was still insisting we change our baby's name, then she'd be in for some big disappointment because we were not. Sister-in-law demanded I put my wife on the phone, but it was already on speaker, and my wife spoke up and said she agrees with me entirely. We weren't changing the name. Sister-in-law hung up on us, but soon started sending emails with text walls of names, even suggesting similar ones. I responded back that the name was from my grandfather, and that's why we were not changing it. She shut up, and we didn't hear from her again until after our son was born. 2 months later, we were blessed with our son. He came out perfect, and we named him just as we'd intended. Well, no surprise, my sister-in-law called us a few days after the birth to scream in our ears that we copied her son's name. I pointed out that she was the real copycat since she had no familial ties to the name, and we did, and anyone who looks at our family trees could see that. Then my wife spoke and said that after the attempted theft of her grandmother's jewelry, she no longer considered sister-in-law her sister and would have nothing to do with her nephew either. For months, we were bombarded with messages and emails from my wife's side of the family. Half were on our side after finding out the whole story. The other half were not. And sister-in-law's baby daddy, true to his word, showed up at my door to make me sorry. I'm not sure what his plan was, but I pretty much towered over him. I'm 6'1" and well built from regular exercise and 3 trips to the gym a week. He, on the other hand, was very skinny and about 5'6" with a baby face that was badly hidden by a slim beard. I told him my house has cameras and to get off my property and never come back. He just yelled a few obscenities at me and drove off in his beat-up old car. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law called us from a different number to yell at me for making sister-in-law's baby daddy feel emasculated. I didn't even threaten the man, just told him to leave and not come back, and if he didn't want to feel emasculated, then he shouldn't have come knocking. Then they tried to bring up the issue of the baby name again and demanded to change our son's name as he's so young, so there's still plenty of time to do it. We held our ground and told them that they were bonkers to still think they were in the right after they copied our choice of name just to try and get one over on us. I said sister-in-law didn't even name her son out of love, but out of spite, just to try and stick it to my wife for no good reason. Then my wife called them both out on the way she was treated growing up, how entitled sister-in-law and mother-in-law have always been, and how she was glad to leave them far behind. And she wants nothing from them, and they won't have anything from us. That left sister-in-law sobbing, and mother-in-law called me a royal bastard before hanging up the phone. There was no contact again for a little while. Still, sister-in-law called us again some time later to bitterly tell us we'd won. She and her baby daddy got into a huge fight and he left. He was apparently very sore that sister-in-law didn't let him even give their son a middle name from his family. He said he was sick of the bullshit and wanted his name named after him. He was apparently very sore that sister-in-law didn't let him even give their son a middle name from his family. And he said that he was sick of the BS and wanted his son named after him and not some guy he wasn't even related to. Sister-in-law finally caved and they got the boy's birth certificate reissued with a completely new name, which cost sister-in-law around $500, and so she claims. Sister-in-law then demanded that we at least compensate her for the name change, plus another $100 for the emotional damage, as now she's going to have to get used to calling her son by a different name. We laughed and said this would have never happened if she hadn't stolen our baby name to begin with, and we didn't owe her anything. Since then, we've been no contact with sister-in-law and mother-in-law, but my father-in-law, who's a very nice man and divorced from mother-in-law for various reasons, would come by often and love his grandson. From what he and other relatives told us, the situation between sister-in-law and her baby daddy was pretty tumultuous. But we don't care. Not our monkey, not our circus. Wow, the entitlement. So this sister-in-law goes behind OP and his wife's back to steal their name and still has the audacity to come back after she has a fight over said name with her baby daddy to ask for the money reimbursed for the name change plus emotional damage. I think she gave herself the emotional damage. I don't think this was OP's fault, so I think she should reimburse herself, if you know what I mean. Anyway, if you're still listening, thank you so much for staying tuned to today's episode. It's been a pleasure having you. Please subscribe for more content and leave your suggestions, comments, and anything else that comes to mind down in the comment section. I'll be waiting. Thank you and see you in the next episode.